I grew up on an island in Alaska and I lived on the same property since birth to high school graduation. Our house was 2 stories and the downstairs had a bathroom, furnace room, storage room, entryway, and rec room. One of the walls had some plywood pieces up so we could feed extension cords through it to our crawl space. We had a C-shaped driveway that you would enter from one side and then park in the carport and then just drive forward to exit. The crawl space consisted of 2 big water tanks because we caught our own rainwater. We also used this area for storage. The space was 10 by 15 but only 3 feet high. You had to lift a cover up to get into the water tanks. You could only enter the crawl space from the side of the house. It was a 2 by 2 door that we kept a master lock on but never actually locked it. Our dog Brewster's area was on the side of the house as well. He had a big fenced area, his own stairway and porch which was half covered, and he had a dog house. Brewster was a chocolate lab mix, who weighed 130 pounds. He was a fantastic dog who only barked when necessary. During the summer we had black bears in our yard most nights and Brewster would give a quick bark to get them on their way. We knew his barks. There are 4 of us in my family, my parents, myself and my older brother who is 2 years older and has Down syndrome. My brother was in special education at school and there were other kids who would come into the same room but just once in a while throughout the day because they had a smaller disability and were able to keep up in some of the general classes, but some of the kids had discipline problems or mental illness. My brother was loved by the kids in school and everyone knew him. One day a native kid that was about 15 came to our door and wanted to play with Travis. We thought it was odd because Travis has moderate Downs and he didn't really like playing with other kids. He liked watching kids play. Travis likes watching movies and listening to music. My mom asked the kid what his name was and he said his name was Mark and he knew Travis from junior high the year prior because he would go into Travis's class sometimes for help with his schoolwork. I remember him staring at me a little too much and he didn't seem like someone who was mentally challenged. My mom let him come in but kept a watchful eye on them. Travis seemed like he didn't want him there and my mom told Mark we were having dinner soon and told him it was time for him to go. My mom found out he had moved into the area where we lived but it was still a little ways away. He had been in and out of foster care most of his life. His parents were abusive addicts. I think he came over another time and my mom felt bad for him but she felt something was off. She felt like he was coming over because of me. My mom politely told him that Travis didn't really like having visitors and he seemed okay with that and never came over again. My parents went to a church service on Wednesday evenings and would be gone a couple hours. I would stay home with Travis. At the time I was 11 and he was 13. I started helping out in the church nursery when I was 9 and when I turned 11 my best friends and I took a babysitting course which included CPR and first aid. We would babysit together and at age 12 started babysitting on our own. My mom was a homemaker and was always home except for Wednesday church service. My parents didn't drink, do drugs, or smoke. I can only remember my parents going out a few times where we needed a babysitter. I would leave the downstairs door unlocked for my parents when they were only going to be gone a couple hours. I was expecting them home in a half hour and was surprised when I heard the downstairs door open and I thought I must have not heard the car pull up and Travis was up past his bedtime, so I quietly tell Travis to go to his bedroom and get into bed. I start walking through the kitchen to the top of the stairs and I call out Mom, Dad, and I hear the footsteps stop and I am looking down the stairs and I can see men's work boots and jeans. This isn't my parents. The way the stairs were set up you could only see the bottom half of someone without descending the stairs. I am scared to death and I run to Travis who is going down the hall and I grab him and drag him to my parents' bedroom because it is the only room that locks, has a phone, and rifles. Down's kids are very stubborn so my brother just wants to go to his room but I get him to sit down on the bed. I am trying to keep him in the room while I am grabbing a gun, and trying to call my neighbor. I can hear him walking around downstairs still. My neighbor answers her phone immediately and I whisper someone is in my house I'm scared. She told me to come out onto the front porch and she'd be there. I get the courage and run to the door and get outside. Thankfully she is in our driveway and has her hound dog with her. She lets me know that she is going to enter the house through the downstairs. She disappears from sight but comes back quickly and tells me that the door is locked, so she makes her way up the stairs. She gets to the top when we hear the downstairs door open and the crunching of gravel as the intruder is running off. She lets go of her dog's leash and the dog chased the person into the woods. The dog came back 10 minutes later and our neighbor sat with us until my parents got home. The police were never called because I think my parents assumed it was a neighbor boy screwing with me. We lived in a safe place where you just had to worry about bears and the occasional wolf. A week after this incident, our dog would bark 15 minutes after we went to bed, every night. We would look out the windows and never saw anything. We figured it was bears because it was springtime and Brewster was probably just getting used to them again. A couple months the barking still happened. I had my best friend stay the night and we would always stay in the downstairs so we could be louder and stay up as late as we'd like. Kate had a brother that was 7 years older and we asked if he'd bring us some booze. I know we were young, but that was the normal thing for our town. Kids started drinking, smoking, and having sex in middle school because of boredom, I think. We got 13 foot of rain a year, so we would be inside a lot. It was a little after midnight and her brother never showed up and Brewster never barked that night either. We were sitting on the stairs braiding each other's hair and we both got a feeling like someone was looking at us, and we looked over and a guy was staring into the window. We ran up the stairs in a panic. We thought maybe it was her brother, but he wouldn't have came to the window and spy on us, and the face seemed too dark to be his. But we had the lights on in the downstairs and there were no lights by that window outside, so it was hard to tell who it was. We didn't wake my parents up just in case it was her brother. We waited 30 minutes and went back down to grab our stuff and went to sleep in my bedroom for the night. The next day we talked to her brother and it wasn't him. That night Brewster was back to barking again. 2 more months go by and I had gone to bed and heard Brewster bark, and I looked out my window and as usual didn't see anything. I had just dozed back off and I woke up to Brewster barking frantically. I look out my window and I see a guy running out of our driveway. I thought about waking my parents, but we had a trail on the side of our house that kids used to get to the road behind us. The neighborhood was on the side of a mountain, so all the kids used trails to go straight through to another road instead of using the main roads. I had never seen someone come out the other part of the driveway because the trail was on the south side of the house along with the crawl space and Brewster's area. My room was the only room on the north side. I decided to go back to sleep and I was tossing and turning. 15 minutes go by and I smell smoke. I go to the hall and the smell is a lot stronger and it's starting to get hazy in Travis's room, which was directly across from mine. I scream, "Fire! Fire! Wake up!" My parents are up and Travis doesn't want to get out of bed, but thank God for the strength of adrenaline. We get outside and flames were pouring out of the crawl space. We get Brewster out of his enclosure and the neighbors all come out to help us. The firemen were there rather quickly. But the fire had destroyed the crawl space and my parents' and Travis's bedrooms because they were directly over the crawl space. The firemen got the fire out thankfully and nobody was physically hurt. This was one of the scariest nights of my life though. I will always remember the fire chief kneeling down to speak to me after he had taken to my parents and he said, "Melinda, we believe it was arson." I looked at him with tears streaming down my face and I say in anger, "Who is arson?" Everyone started laughing so hard, and I am thinking, how is this funny? That damn arson could have killed my family. So he explained what arson was. I am still friends with the old fire chief's son and I share that story with him often because his father passed away from cancer when we were teens. His father is the only happy memory I have from that horrific night. The island I grew up on had a city and a village out south. We lived out south but before the village. We had firemen for out south, north, and the city. We had state troopers for the island and city cops in the city limits. My mom took my brother and I to our family friend's house and my dad dealt with the fire officials and a state trooper showed up later. After the investigation, my family, neighbors, and firemen pieced together that a person had been living in our crawl space for at least 4 months. We know he set the house on fire on purpose. He used a box of matches. My mom said the first odd thing she noticed that night was the smell of sulfur. We also know who did it. It was Mark. His uncle was one of the firemen who first showed up at our house and saw him standing near our driveway watching. My mom had told him my description of what the person was wearing that I saw fleeing from our house, and it was what he was wearing. Behind our house near the crawl space area, my dad found where he hung out when he wasn't in the crawl space. There were a bunch of cigarette butts, cans of soda, which were also found in the crawl space. But because our crawl space wasn't locked, our insurance company would haven't paid for the repairs. Because of our water tanks, the space was supposed to be locked. So my parents never said anything to the police, and the firemen never said anything. By pursuing this, we could have not had a home, a house my father had built. It took 4 months for our house to be repaired, and it smelled like ozone even years later. What bothers me the most is knowing he had seen me and my friends undressed numerous times while changing in the rec room during tons of sleepovers. Where he had set up shop was right next to the plywood with the holes drilled through. He listened to all of our secrets. I never explained to my friends that he had seen us and heard us during our sleepovers, because I didn't want them to feel sick to their stomachs like I did and still do. I still have issues when it comes to being home alone. I can't sleep if I am the only adult in the house. I keep the volume on everything very low. I am scared to shower. I like to be able to see the front door, and I have night terrors to this day, and I am 34 now. I have been dealing with anxiety since the fire and panic attacks since I was 18. Just recently I was diagnosed with PTSD. When the intruder was in his early 20s, he was caught for burning down a few houses and was put in jail. All my childhood toys were stored in the crawl space along with a lot of our family's sentimental possessions. I hope this was easy to read. I have been dealing with a possible neurological condition for the past year, and I lose my train of thought easily and struggle to find words that are simple. This story didn't happen to me but to very close male friend of 7 years. I was hanging out with him and a couple of other friends, and we were talking about our creepy experiences. Here is the story from his perspective. His perspective, a little bit of background. I was 16 years old when this happened, living in Amman City, the capital of Jordan in the Middle East. I was in high school. I used to weigh 85 kilos and was 192 centimeters tall, and I was a calm but intimidating person if I wanted to be, but never really messed with anyone, unless I was provoked to. I just got off school and decided I wanted to go downtown because I was bored and didn't want to stay at home, and I wanted to get some DVDs and games to enjoy later. So I decided to take the bus as I wanted to save money, but I had to take a taxi to the bus stop, which was about less than 10 minutes by car. When I stopped a coming taxi, inside the vehicle appeared a light-skinned man with black greasy hair, wearing a worn-out dark green shirt and a pair of jeans, who looked to be between the age of 30 to 34, addressed me through the passenger window and asked the man, "Hey, where do you want to go?" Me, "I need to go to the bus stop that takes me downtown. It is only 10 minutes away." The man, "Well, I can take you downtown if you like. I am gonna to pass by that area. I can drop you there and you don't have to pay me." At this point, a red flag should have gotten off in my head. But I thought that this man just wanted to be kind, and I really didn't want to go through the hassle of taking more than one trip, so I decided to hop into his car, and we would be on our way. Looking back on it now, this was a big fucking mistake. Now there are different ways to head downtown, and I only knew a couple of ways. As the man was driving, he started to take different routes that I never have seen before. Still no alarm bells started ringing, as I only assumed he was taking a shortcut to get away from traffic. By this point 20 minutes have passed, and I began to feel uneasy. Usually from the bus route I take, it only needs about 20 minutes to get downtown when there is little to no traffic. But I brushed it off once again. Then suddenly the man began to speak in his calm yet suspicious tone. The man, "Hey, do you mind if I use your phone? I want to see if you have any videos or music I can send via Bluetooth." I found this to be a strange request, but seeing as the man was giving me a free ride, and the fact that I didn't have anything private in my phone, I handed it to him as I didn't want to be impolite and was just trying to break the awkward atmosphere. He played with the phone a little bit, then proceeded to put my phone with his own on under the empty space of the driver's door handle. Doubt began circling my mind and I felt vulnerable without my phone. Yet despite all this, I silenced my doubts and stared to the window outside. The feeling of dread and uneasiness only grew more as I was not able to make out where we are exactly anymore. As the man kept driving, I only started to see empty road with only desert on both right and left sides with only a couple of old worn-out, rusty shipping containers. It is getting darker at this point, and this is where things get even creepier. The man proceeds to pick up his phone and began to speak to someone at the end of the line, shouting the following with an angry voice. The man, I am coming to fuck you up, you motherfucker. You better prepare yourself as I am coming to beat you up, you son of a bitch. As soon as the man ended the phone call, I knew something was absolutely wrong. Looking more closely at the phone he was holding, I was able to recognize that the phone he had was the type of phone that doesn't have Bluetooth. Alarm bells started ringing loudly in my head. The whole call came out of nowhere and I could feel a dread, and the fear was absolutely real. I asked him for my phone, growing nervous and impatient with each word escaping my mouth. He looked at me with this strange and annoyed look and said, "The man, I just wanted to see what you got on your phone." By this point, I had enough. I sternly told him to give me my phone, the anger and fear barely contained in my voice. He hesitantly obliged after muttering back and forth, and I just knew I had to get out of this car. Feeling a rush of adrenaline, I decided to pretend I was talking to my parents, and created a scenario where there was an emergency and that I had to get back. So I began telling the man that I need to return back immediately and told him to drop me off right here and right now. As I was seeing an upcoming traffic light, I knew that this was my only chance of escape. I was not sticking around any longer to know where this man is taking me to, God knows fucking where. As soon as the man stopped at the traffic light, I spoke to him in my most intimating voice to open the passenger door. Luckily there was a couple of cars that stopped next to use, and thank God the man responded with a menacing look and pressed the unlock button. I got out of that car faster than you could say fuck this shit, I am out, and went straight to small run-out coffee break stop in the middle of nowhere as the taxi sped off. I went inside and asked the server if the downtown was close by, out of breath with sweat dripping from my forehead. The server looked at me with a confused, yet irritated face and said, "Server, you know you are out of the capital right, heading to the city of Zarqa." Shit I though, fucking shit, as I proceeded to call my parents to pick me up from the middle of nowhere. God knows I am not taking a taxi to get back home, or anytime soon. Thinking about it after a while, the man planned on kidnapping me from the start, trying to take away my phone so I would not call for help, and proceeded to pretend he is having a fight with someone on the phone to secretly message his buddies. It's been quite a while since I posted on Reddit at all. I usually lurk around since I don't post nor comment much, so please bear with me on paragraphs and such. This happened when I was around 5 to 6 years old. My mom wasn't the best mom in the world by any means, and she sure had her faults and struggles. One of the many things I had grown accustomed to was staying home alone while she worked or went out to party. At the time I had no idea she was partying, as I didn't know what that was. Most of the time my older siblings were told to look after me. Sometimes they would, but most of the time they'd say they would. Then once she left, they'd leave to hang out with their friends and do their own things. I didn't mind it, to be honest. I liked being home alone, and at that age I didn't understand the fear of it, until this happened. My mom had went out somewhere, I don't remember where, probably to party, and it was around 5 p.m. My siblings were off doing their own things, so I was left home alone. I was told the usual protocol: don't open the door to strangers, don't leave the house, so on and so forth. We didn't live in the best neighborhood, but it also wasn't the worst. Our apartment was 3 in 1, one in the front, one in the middle, one in the back. Ours was in the back, so you wouldn't know it was there, as you couldn't see it from the main road, and we had a fence in our backyard. So I felt pretty safe. nothing bad had really ever happened to me or while being home alone, and I thought nothing ever would because at that age, I didn't see anything to be afraid of. We also didn't have a home phone. My mom was providing for far too many children and working a low-income, under-the-table job, so we were often without a phone, T.B, and sometimes electricity. The night started pretty normal. I made dinner and watched VHS after VHS, probably listened to some music while I could. Even though I was left by myself, I was still pretty responsible and didn't leave at all. I also knew my mom or one of my siblings would be home by September 10 p.m. to crash, so there really wasn't much to worry about. Before I really get into the story, I'm trying to figure out how to explain the layout. I'm not good with explaining floor plans whatsoever, so please bear with me. Going into our place, like I said, it was at the back, so you'd be going in through the back. There was a basic shitty screen door and a normal deadbolt locked door. Once you entered those doors, you went up long narrow/steep steps which entered into a small hallway. To the right of the hallway was the living room, which also had a balcony and a broken screen door. To the left was the bathroom and my mom's room. If you went a little to the left, there was an archway that led to the kitchen/dining room. There was also a small storage within the kitchen, and if you turned right in the kitchen, there was my bedroom/my sibling's bedroom. Don't ask, it was a messed up sleeping situation. Hopefully that explained it clear enough, but like I said, I suck at explaining layouts and floor plans. I was sitting in the living room majority of the night. That's really the only place where there was some entertainment. The balcony door and main doors were locked, though the balcony door didn't really matter since there was a huge hole in the screen from our many cats. Anyways, I started to hear banging on the main door, and that was enough to startle me. I sat there in silence, knowing better not to answer, so I hoped that maybe it was one of our neighbors and they'd leave after no response. Nope. It continued. Loud, angry bangs. Like you'd hear from the police. I was quite literally frozen in fear. I was always told to be safe, stay away from strangers, never answer the door, etc. But it wasn't until that moment I realized what fear felt like, and why I was warned of those things. The bangs continued, one right after another, and some unintelligible yelling coming from a male. I knew that all that was separating us was the main door. It wasn't that sturdy and it really had to be replaced, so I knew the chances of this man getting inside the apartment was high. I was always told to hide in these situations, so I turned off the TV, or whatever I was doing, either movies or music, and I debated on where to hide. I remember one time a similar happening went on and me and my sister hid in the shower. I scratched that off real quickly. I opted to hide in the closet within my siblings and my own bedroom. It was pretty big, could have been considered a walk-in, and my sister would often sleep in there, her choice, not by force or anything. I grabbed a knife in the kitchen, always being directed by my mom to have a weapon in these situations, and I ran into the closet as quick as possible, turned off all the lights, closed the door and hid behind a bunch of boxes. The only problem was my loud ass breathing. I feel like I waited for eternity. The bangs would stop for a moment or two and I'd think I was in the clear, then they'd get even louder and louder, sounding like someone was using their foot to knock as opposed to their hand. Then I realized that sound was them body checking the door. I could hear them yelling, but it was all gibberish. I couldn't make anything out, and with my heart beating so loud in my ears, I could barely hear anyways. I knew the door was as good as gone after the last blow to it. It was so loud that it echoed throughout the apartment, and soon after I heard loud boot-wearing footsteps start up the stairs. My breathing was so loud I had to cover my mouth, and all I could do was wait and listen, and hope this person didn't find me. They began to yell for my mom, telling her to get out there and talk to them, but I still couldn't place the voice. My mom had way too many boyfriends for me to ever really keep track, so I assumed this was one of her many flings coming back for a fight. The men began throwing things angrily, yelling for my mom to talk to him to get out here right now and face me. I wasn't sure where he was exactly, either her room or the living room, but it meant that he was soon going to be trashing the rest of the apartment. He was in the kitchen now. rummaging, throwing things against the wall and breaking whatever it was that he was breaking. At this point I began to cry. I never knew what it was like to fear death until that point. "Where's your kids?" "Bet they're asleep." His voice was so menacing and angry, maybe even taunting in a way. I could hear the loud steps of him entering the bedroom and I saw the light turned on from underneath the closet door. Hand over my mouth, sobbing and going into a panic attack, I tried not to move a muscle. I could hear another set of footsteps coming up the stairs, but these were much more softer, and then I heard my name called from one of my older brothers. I still didn't make a peep. I don't know what happened next. I assume the guy that broke in and my brother fought it out. I didn't see any of it as I remained in the closet the whole time. I didn't know the situation or what danger I was in. I just followed what I was always told to do. I could hear many profanities and violent, angry remarks being yelled. "Get out of my fucking house, stay away from my family, get away from my sister," type of stuff from my brother, and "fuck you, fuck your mom, I'll kill you all," from the man who broke in. I thought my brother was going to die, honestly. He is very short and there isn't much to him. I thought for sure the man was going to kill him and I was going to be next. After what felt like hours, I could hear the loud footsteps go down the stairs and a bang. I'm not sure what the bang was, maybe him attempting to close the now broken door or maybe kicking or punching it. Like I said, not sure. A few more minutes passed until my brother called out my name. I began wailing at the top of my lungs. I guess the fear hit me hard, and as soon as I knew I was safe, I couldn't hold back the tears. My brother found me in the closet. His nose and lips were all bloody and I could tell he'd soon have a black eye. He picked me up and told me we were safe, and I never felt such relief in my life. My mom got home not long after, and she flipped. My mom was terrifying. You did not want to mess with her, especially when it came to her kids, and when she heard what happened, saw how scared I was and saw my brother's face, she lost her shit. It's safe to say a lot of hugs were shared, tears were shed and apologies were given. My brothers ended up fixing the door that night the best they could. The door stuck a lot and got jammed, but it would do. That wasn't the end of it though. The next morning was a school day, so we all got up early, ate breakfast, the usual. When it came to leaving, my sister discovered we couldn't. The door had been jammed into place on purpose and the knobs were missing. We, quite literally, were stuck. Everyone panicked because we didn't know what to do. We couldn't call anyone and my brothers attempted to get it open but it would not budge. I thought it was cool because I didn't want to go to school anyways and I didn't really understand the situation. I just thought the door jammed by itself. We all ended up going out on the balcony and having my oldest brother climb down. It wasn't that high, about 1 story up, and beside our balcony we had a freezer, so that made it an even shorter fall. But he jumped down on the freezer, went to the shed and got a ladder. That was probably one of the most terrifying experiences as well, and I hate heights and ladders ever since. We ended up finding the doorknobs next to the building. I found out then it was all intentional, and we didn't have to go to school that day. Again, still not the end unfortunately. Around the time school got out, 3:30ish, I went over to my friends down the street to hang out. I didn't want to be at home, and little did I know I wasn't able to handle or deal, I should say, with that situation. I couldn't fully comprehend it and I was just downright terrified. I had a fun time there, and this is the night I remember most clearly. I had rode my bike there and my sister was banging on my friend's door saying we had to get home, the cops are coming, mom's in trouble. So I got on my bike and followed her home. When I thought of mom being in trouble, I thought that meant she was going to jail. Boy was I wrong. When I got there, my mom was on the front lawn yelling back and forth with one of her exes, the man who had broken in. I recognized him and was able to put 2 and 2 together right on the spot. She told my sister and I to get upstairs and to lock the door. We went out back and waited instead. Our brothers weren't home, so if anyone had to step in, It had to be us. I could hear him hitting her, saying he was going to kill us all when we least expected it, and he was going to start with the youngest first, me, and detailing how he was going to do it, how he was going to enjoy it, how he couldn't wait to see us all suffer. I tripped over a concrete slab and hurt my toe. Bad timing, as I went crying to my mom. Yes, I was an idiot, but I was worried about her, and also, it hurt a lot, and mommy's kisses made everything better, duh. So she sat me down on the step, our neighbors in the front. And I watched as her ex hit her. She fought back, put cigarettes out on her, continued to detail our deaths, and then I heard sirens. They arrested him that night, and soon after we moved to a more safer and sturdy location. I'm not sure what happened to him. He might still be in jail, in town, somewhere else in this world, or dead. I do know now that when the door was jammed and the doorknobs were removed, he was planning to get into the apartment by the balcony and set fire to the apartment, but we woke up/got out before he had arrived, and by then the landlord was already there, so he couldn't do anything. So to the man who wanted and tried to kill my whole family, let's never meet ever again.